Clinton, Iowa is the easternmost city in our state. In the 1800s, this river city was the lumber capital of the nation. Logs were floated down the Mississippi from Wisconsin and Minnesota to Clinton, where they were cut into lumber. Natives celebrated the town's rich history and enjoyed the beauty that comes with life on the river. It is also home to our next Iowa entrepreneur, Emily Starr, creator of StarrMatica, an interactive software company focused on the educational market. Emily formed a love for education at an early age. The daughter of a business education teacher at Maquoketa High School, Emily spent more time than the average student in school.
Well, I always liked the school atmosphere. I don't know, I like desks and chairs and bulletin boards and the smell of school, and to get to be there with my mom and see what she did on a daily basis was a really nice thing. Not all kids get that opportunity to see what their parents do while they're at work, and so I really liked being able to see where she went every day and what she was doing.
It didn't take Emily long to realize she shared her mom's passion for teaching.
I always knew in the back of my mind that education was probably a career path for me. I was always a kid who really liked school, and as I got older, really liked being around kids and helping kids and working with kids with babysitting and working with after-school programs and summer programs. And I found that was something I really enjoyed, helping them to learn and being creative to find ways that would interest them to help them to learn.
Emily earned her education degree from St. Ambrose University in Davenport and went to work as an elementary teacher in DeWitt, Iowa.
My favorite part about being a teacher was the challenge of finding a creative way to get kids interested in a topic and to teach them a topic. So I remember my first year that I was teaching, we were talking about ecosystems, and my class was learning about the rainforest. And so we built out of construction paper and carpet rolls and craft supplies, anything we could find. We turned our room into a rainforest and learned about the parts of the rainforest as we did that. Any kind of simulations, games, whatever I could find in a creative way to get the kids interested in what they were learning was my favorite part of teaching.
Emily loved adding creativity to her lesson plans. Sadly, this became more and more difficult as teachers were forced to deal with additional government regulations.
No Child Left Behind really changed what we did in the classroom. With there being such a push for standardized testing, we were doing a lot of teaching to the test, and you hate to say that kind of thing, but we really were. We were focusing in on reading and math. There was a lot of analyzing of data. There was a lot more reporting, and when I saw that the amount of reporting was increasing and then the amount of time that I had to actually plan lessons and think about how I'm going to teach the students was decreasing, that was the point at which I started to question if this was a long-term career for me.
Along with standardized testing, Emily was asked to integrate the use of technology in her classroom.
So while I was teaching, I was given a projector to use in my classroom. And it's like giving someone a DVD player without any DVDs. So I was struggling to find content to use with the projector. So I was doing lots of online searches, trying to find things that were, questionable if they were good content or not. I looked at our software CDs at school, and they were aging, and you only had them for certain subjects. And then I looked at the more comprehensive software programs that the publishers were putting out, and they were more for individual students, and they were incredibly expensive. And so what I really wanted was a library of digital content that no matter what I was teaching, I could go and find resources to support what I was doing in the classroom, and did research and found that didn't exist. So I wanted to build that library of content. I knew it would be useful for other teachers, but I didn't know how you take an idea and turn it into a business because I had no prior business experience.
Emily had a great idea, but didn't know where to begin. As chance would have it, Emily received a flyer in the mail from the Davenport Small Business Development Center. The flyer was entitled Boot Camp for Entrepreneurs, Everything You Need to Know to Start Your Own Business.
Before I went to boot camp, I didn't even know what a business plan was. I had no previous knowledge. And so through that day, it was Ann Hutchinson from the Small Business Development Center. She really walked you through the basics of writing a business plan, thinking about marketing, looking at your target customer, what might be your accounting practices, getting a team of accountants and lawyers and people on your team that can help you, looking at intellectual property. It was really a wide variety of information that after I left, I felt like, okay, I can go from A to B and with the assistance that they provide, get this business off the ground.
Armed with the knowledge from the boot camp for entrepreneurs, Emily formed StarrMatica, a library of educational content that teachers could use in their classrooms. Emily continued to teach and ran her new business out of her home.
Because I didn't have the business background, I didn't understand that when you're doing the marketing, the sales, the writing of the content, the project management, everything in the business that you'd normally have a team doing in a larger company, that it takes all your time and more. And teaching is a full-time job in itself, and more than a full-time job. I mean, there's always work at night and work on weekends. And so trying to marry those two, I quickly realized it wasn't going to work. So after a year of trying to do double duty, I quit teaching and took a sabbatical for a year to see how it would go, and then eventually left my job and was doing StarrMatica full-time.
Emily was now committed exclusively to StarrMatica. Without full-time income, she relied on her savings to develop the StarrMatica system.
So I was very fortunate as an entrepreneur and that we had a large savings account that we had set aside to help get us started. And we also had parents on both sides of the family that were willing to help us get started. So I put together a presentation and I gave it to both sides of the family, and they both gave me seed money in order to get started with StarrMatica. And then we found some other outside friends that were able to invest in StarrMatica as well. And then additional family funds were needed. And when all was said and done, it took 10 times what we thought it was going to get StarrMatica developed and to get it off the ground and out there. So there's no quitting when you have family and friends and your own savings in the business. You just keep going and you problem solve and you figure out a way to make it work.
Content creation for StarrMatica came naturally to Emily, thanks to her 10 years of teaching experience. She would storyboard each lesson plan and then hire programmers to take her idea and create functional software for classrooms. Even though Emily excelled at creating content, selling her product to schools was an entirely different challenge.
So when I first started StarrMatica, you're really excited about your idea and you think, no matter who I show this to, everybody is going to want it and they're going to be as excited about it as I am. And the reality was, in our first year of sales, I think I spoke with 300 schools that I went around and cold called and spoke with principals and shared the product with them. And it was an early stage product. It was unproven. But after all of those trips, we ended up in the first year getting one after school program to sign on to StarrMatica.
Even as she struggled to market StarrMatica, Emily was not about to quit.
I believed in what I was doing, and I just knew it was a matter of getting more of the product developed, figuring out how to share it with administrators. That was one of the struggles. Was I was a teacher, and I understood why teachers needed it and how teachers were going to use it, but teachers weren't the purchasers of StarrMatica. It was the administrators, so figuring out how to share it in a way that administrators could see how it could help them, could help their teachers, and be something that was beneficial for the whole school.
With startup money from family and friends on the line, Emily continued to fight for her product. She needed to find a way to connect StarrMatica not only with teachers, but with school administration.
Before we sold into schools, my experience with schools was as a teacher, and I was never the buyer of products other than smaller purchases for my classroom. And I didn't have an understanding of the mindset or the whole process that's around purchasing for administrators. And so that was a really steep learning curve that I didn't understand, that there are several levels of decision making, and there are different budgets, and you have to understand exactly what their building is focusing on for the year. And I also didn't know that education is a really tough market to sell into. I didn't know a lot about selling into education, which is ironic since I was in education. But I found as I went out to outside investors that they're leery oftentimes of the education market unless they can see a huge upside. And having a product that we wanted to keep really reasonably priced so that anybody could afford it was also difficult in going out and trying to find other support.
Emily's product is now in hundreds of schools across the country. Being an entrepreneur is a lot of hard work. That is why Emily believes it is important to love what you do.
It can be a difficult thing because entrepreneurship can be really lonely, and it is something where you're accountable to yourself. So you have to stay excited and motivated about what you're doing. And I think it really helps if you've developed something that is near and dear to your heart and they're excited about. I jump out of bed in the morning and all I want to do all day is develop content and search for resources, and there are a lot of other things in the business that I have to do because they're part of the business, but the core of what I'm doing is something that really excites me. And on any given day, if I could choose what I wanted to do with my day, I would do that.
Last season on Iowa Entrepreneur, we went to Des Moines East Village and met Mike Draper, the entrepreneur behind Raygun. Right next door, there's a small cookie company receiving a lot of attention in the entrepreneurial community. Thelma's Treats Oven Box has been featured in many publications for its innovative design. Dereck Lewis is the entrepreneur behind Thelma's Treats, a cookie company that is known for its oven box cookies and ice cream cookie sandwiches. Dereck got his first experience with entrepreneurship while still a student at Iowa State University.
I went to the College of Business, not really sure I like sales and things like that, so as most college students, you don't really know what you're doing. A couple of things happened during college. One of them, I did a study abroad internship in Alaska. I worked for a big game hunting operation. I was really into hunting as a rural Iowa kid.
Hunting is not a typical study abroad program for a business major. It was an opportunity he had stumbled upon while working a part-time job.
I was actually working as a cashier at Sportsman's Warehouse in Ankeny during college, and a guy came through my line who had a bush plant on his shirt. He was a booking agent for high-end hunts, and he was in Iowa to find a whitetail for a client. And I said, wow, that sounds like a really cool job. How do I get into that business? And he gave me a number for a guide, and he goes, this guy's the toughest guide there is. In Alaska, he's doing the biggest things, so if you can work for him and get a job for him, then you can work in this industry. And so I called Mike, the guy, and he goes, all right, you gotta be able to carry 100 pounds at 8,000 feet. If you get here and you're not in shape and I don't think you can do it, I'm gonna send you back on a plane and you're paying for all of it. If you get here and you can hack it, then I'll pay for your ticket. So I started working out right then. The first day we got there, they loaded my pack up way heavy and we did 20 miles. I don't even think we needed to go 20 miles to get anywhere. I think they wanted to see if I was up for it.
While Dereck was getting a physical education, he was also getting an education in entrepreneurship. Not only was he learning from his boss, but he was also learning from the clients he was guiding through the Alaskan wilderness.
The really interesting part of that was the people that go on those hunts are typically really successful business people, and they usually own companies. And that's kind of where I got exposed probably most in-depthly to kind of entrepreneurship, because you spent 10 days in a tent with this guy who on day 1 and 2, they're still CEO, and on day 3, 4 through 10, they're just a guy. And so I would quiz them about all kinds of stuff. And there's no TV, no radio, no nothing. Like, we just have each other to talk to.
After his study abroad experience, Dereck was back to school where he and his roommate started several micro businesses.
During college, there was this big ice storm, and I remember seeing some limbs fall, and I told Justin, I was like, hey, it'd be really cool if we had like a chainsaw and a trailer, like we could cut limbs and make a bunch of money. I said it sort of flippantly. He's like, perfect, let's do it. So I had a truck, and we drove to Des Moines and got a trailer from my parents' house, bought a chainsaw, all the stuff. We went to Copyworks at midnight, because you can do that in college towns, and printed a flyer that just said limb cleanup and had both our cell numbers on it. And then we drove around town all night and stuffed them in the doors of the houses that had a limb that we thought was just like a cleanup limb, not like a major tree into someone's house. We had customer experiences, we negotiated price, we had to handle logistics of saying when we're gonna be there, setting appointments. It really happened fast and more than we intended.
After graduation, Dereck briefly worked in real estate and insurance. Neither occupations were the right fit for him. Dereck's college roommate stepped into the picture again with an entrepreneurial idea.
He said, hey, there's this cookie delivery franchise based here. They're just starting to sell franchises, and you should look at it because it'd be cool. And that was it. Like, that was the logic of it.
So Dereck bought in and opened a small franchise in the Des Moines market. His mother helped him run the business while his wife supported their family.
My wife got a good job, and I, kind of had her buy-in from the beginning. Hey, if we can do this right from the start, I can have very little risk and I can grow it very big. But that means I won't have the income like my buddies have, and we can't do some things. And she was, say, reluctantly okay with that. So, because I'd kind of, I'd kind of skipped from real estate to insurance. It was kind of like, hey, this is your thing. So if it's kind of this, or you should probably just go get a regular job. And not so much an ultimatum, but kind of an ultimatum, where she was just kind of like, we need to, get real about our life here. So if you're gonna make this big, you better do it quick.
Shortly into his new business, Dereck became frustrated with the lack of product offerings.
I bought the cookie franchise. We did it for a little bit. I realized they needed more product offerings. So we started putting some ice cream in between the cookies. Our friend Lynn Donahue owns Jersey Freeze in Monroe. That's a small ice cream store. He had a little ice cream machine that he loaned us. And he said, why don't you just take that for a while? If you like it, you can buy it or whatever, but just make some ice cream sandwiches. And so we could fill 6 ice cream sandwiches at a time. And then we would, the next day, wrap them in saran wrap and put Scotch tape on them. That's how we sold them at the farmer's market when we started.
Not only was he deviating from the franchise's product offerings, but he was using his own cookie recipe, one passed down from his great-grandma Thelma. He took his ice cream sandwich idea to the franchise to see if they would buy in.
Went to the company and said, hey, this is a great product, we should add it to the franchise, I could help you implement it. And they weren't really interested in that, and that's fine, they were just doing their core thing. And I said, well, that's fine, I'll just do it on my own. So in spring of 2012 is when we actually launched Thelma's.
Since Dereck was using his great-grandma Thelma's recipe, he wanted to name his business after her. But his advisors urged him to be objective.
When I knew that I wanted to launch my own company, I started working with Saturday Manufacturing, the marketing firm who did all of our branding. And we went through a bunch of different ideas. Thelma's was the first idea, because I thought, wow, it's awesome. It's our story, it's our thing. But he's like, we should look at it objectively. So we put a bunch of names up and we looked at it, and I'm like, I don't know, I can't get my head around some other idea. I can't push that hard for something that doesn't have some piece of me in it. So that's really what it was, just a better way to tell the story because it was genuine. The brand really built from that. So it's grandma's house. What do you feel when you're at grandma's house? What kind of smells are you smelling? I mean, we wrote a whole brand identity piece around Grandma Thelma. So that's what kind of guides our brand.
Dereck's marketing firm not only helped out with the naming of the company, they also helped out with all of his branding and logos, including a very expensive oven box design.
The box was an idea that we came up with at the very first meeting we sat down with at Saturday Manufacturing. We kind of knew we wanted to call it Thelma's, and Brian's like, what do you want the box to be? And I'm like, well, I want it to be something cool, and well, an oven will be cool. It just seemed to fit our brand so well because we were trying to convey getting cookies from your grandma. Everybody thinks of fresh out of the oven, sitting on the oven, things like that. So that has been the most critical part of our continued success is that we went really heavy into the branding and marketing at the front end. Whereas I think it would have been easy to buy stock boxes, get labels printed from a local, put them on there, say, oh, these are really good cookies. Well, a lot of people make a great cookies. People make better cookies than me everywhere. But our product is the whole experience together. So the oven box and the warm and all of this stuff. So I'm glad that we did it. In retrospect, it seemed pretty risky at the time.
In 2012, Dereck started to market his frozen ice cream sandwiches to local grocery stores.
About midsummer, I decided to walk into a Hy-Vee and ask them how I can get these ice cream sandwiches on the shelf because they seem to be pretty popular. Luckily, I walked into the Urbandale Hy-Vee, and the frozen manager there was Dan Van Gundy, who was super nice, and he just kind of held my hand through what I need to do to be a good wholesaler for Hy-Vee. He's like, here's what we need to make on a product if it's on our shelf. So if you can still make money, I think they should sell for around $3, maybe $4, but $3 would be better. You know, he really kind of advised us instead of being so negotiation driven. So we did all the things that he said, put some on the shelf, and then they sold out in a week or so. Like, it just went really fast. And he called and said, we need more. Like, it's gonna take me a while. I can't make them that fast.
Ice cream sandwich sales started growing as they started to appear in more and more stores. Thelma's Treats even made their way into Minneapolis.
Part of the reasons we went to Minneapolis first instead of Kansas City or Chicago was my college roommate, Justin, who reappears in the story. We had kind of talked, he's a very successful financial advisor and kind of has this great career and all these things, but he's kind of watched me grow this startup business, which I know in his DNA somewhere that he wants to jump in and like work an event at a cart or something. So he worked an event with me last summer, the Hinterland Music Festival. And he's like, these would go great in Minneapolis. We should figure that out. And so I said, why don't you be the distributor for Minneapolis? I'll just bring the sandwiches to you and then you handle it from there. So he bought a truck and hired a driver and got cold storage. And so we ship sandwiches to him, and then he provides the direct store delivery to all those retailers. So he's put into all the events and done a lot of the work there. So a lot of our success could be attributed to his hustling.
Thelma's Treats has grown way beyond what Dereck had originally imagined. Dereck is quick to point out that he couldn't have done it without the support of his family and friends and his willingness to ask for help.
I've always, been really inquisitive, and maybe some of that was in Alaska, just learning how approachable. I don't care if you make $10 billion a year or $10 an hour, you're still interested in telling me your story. Maybe that's where I learned how approachable all people are. And some of it's just having a little bit of chutzpah or something, just to walk up and say, hey, I've got this idea, what do you think of this? And so sometimes you'll catch people off guard, but that's how a lot of our ideas start.